Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Today we're looking at the Dhammapada Verse number 42, and it's the story of Nanda the Herdsman. At the time, the Buddha was visiting a village in the kingdom of Kosala, and we learn from the Dhammapada commentary that Nanda was a herdsman who looked after the cows for Anathapindika. He would occasionally go to visit the Buddha at Anathapindika's house, and there he would listen to the Buddha's teachings. He made a request to the Buddha, an invitation to come visit his home, but the Buddha put him off, so he postponed. But after some time, while traveling, the Buddha and the Sangha came to visit Nanda's home. And this was because the Buddha knew it was time for Nanda to receive the teachings, that the time was right for Nanda to receive the teachings. When they arrived, Nanda respectfully received the Buddha and the Sangha, and he served them with milk and milk products and other choice food for 7 days. And on the very last day, after hearing a teaching given by the Buddha, Nanda attained path and fruit of stream entry. And as Buddha was leaving that day, Nanda carried the bowl of the Buddha and followed him for quite a distance, paid respects to him, and then turned back to go home. In that instance, a hunter who was an old enemy of Nanda shot him down. And the Bhikkhus who were following the Buddha saw Nanda lying dead. So they were following behind the Buddha. The Buddha had already gone a distance. So they later reported the incident to the Buddha, saying, "Venerable Sir, because you came here, Nanda, who made great offerings to you and accompanied you on your return, was killed as he was turning back to go home." And the Buddha said to them, "Because whether I came here or not, there was no escape from death for him, as a wrongly directed mind can do oneself much greater harm than an enemy or a thief can." And so the Buddha says this particular verse, Diso disaṁ kayirā, whatever an enemy would do to an enemy, verī pana verinaṁ, or one hostile to another bearing hostility, Micchāpaṇihitaṁ cittaṁ, a wrongly directed mind, pāpiyo tato kare, can inflict far worse or more evil or wicked to itself. So what the Buddha is reminding in this particular teaching is there is no escape from death. We are all death-bound. So that's the first thing, that it doesn't matter what was done. So whether the Buddha visited Nanda or not and received the offerings from Nanda, Nanda was still death-bound, as we all are. So that's the bigger picture. He in turn says that a wrongly directed mind does more to one than an enemy or a thief. So if you think about it, what he's saying is that Nanda was very fortunate because he had entered the stream before he passed away, before he was shot down and died. That's something that we all must take on board, that in our case, we may not face such things, but to have a wrongly directed mind, it's worse than whatever an enemy can do to another enemy or someone hostile to another who's hostile. It inflicts far worse. And I think that's what we'll explore in this session. Like, what does the Buddha really mean by this? The first sutta that we can look at that can help us to connect with the Buddha's words is the Vyasana Sutta. This is in Anguttara Nikāya, chapter 5, discourse number 130. We've touched on this sutta before, and it's a very important sutta. And if you haven't, we'll go through it now. So the Buddha says, Bhikkhus, there are these 5 disasters. What 5? Disaster due to loss of relatives, disaster due to loss of wealth, disaster due to illness, disaster regarding virtuous behavior, and disaster regarding view. And then this is the important part that the Buddha says. It is not because of disaster due to loss of relatives, disaster due to loss of wealth, or a disaster due to illness that with the breakup of the body after death, beings are reborn in a place of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. It is because of a disaster regarding virtuous behavior and disaster regarding view that with the breakup of the body after death, beings are reborn in a place of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. These are the 5 disasters. So when the Buddha talks about a wrongly directed mind, he's really implying that with a wrongly directed mind, it's far worse than a thief or an enemy. What they can do to you is because if you have a wrongly directed mind, you have wrong view. And with wrong view, you can descend to lower realms. And if you have wrong view, you can also be inclined to be unvirtuous or lack morality. You don't see a problem with misconduct by body, speech, and mind. And that also leads to being reborn after death in a bad destination. So instead, the Buddha encourages that one needs to train the mind, one needs to tame the mind. And that is where the safety lies, that you don't sabotage yourself or prevent yourself from entering the stream. Because in the case of Nanda, what's very clear is that the fact that he entered the stream is safety. And that is quite an important thing. One of the suttas that we can reference in terms of stream entry is the Nakasika Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 13, discourse number 1. And we've spoken about this one before. And it says, "Thus have I heard, at one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove under the Pindika's monastery. Then the Buddha, picking up a little bit of dirt under his fingernail, addressed the bhikkhus. What do you think, bhikkhus, which is more, the little bit of dirt under my fingernail or this great earth?" And they replied, "Sir, the great earth is far more. The little bit of dirt under your fingernail is tiny. Compared to the great earth, it's not nearly 100th, 1,000th, or 100,000th part." Then the Buddha says, "In the same way, for a noble disciple, accomplished in view, a person with comprehension, the suffering that's over and done with is more. What's left is tiny. Compared to the mass of suffering in the past that's over and done with, it's not nearly 100th, 1,000th, or 100,000th part, since there are at most 7 more lives. That's how very beneficial it is to comprehend the teaching and gain the eye of the Dhamma." So here, this is a confirmation that when you enter the stream, when you realize path and fruit of stream entry, there is safety there because you abandon a significant portion of suffering. There's a maximum of 7 more lives. And with those 7 more lives, you won't be reborn lower than the human realm. And so there's also safety in that. Now, what we do know about stream entry comes from one of the suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya about stream entry. And it's this dialogue between the Buddha and Venerable Sariputta. And Venerable Sariputta is asked by the Buddha, "Sariputta, they speak of the stream. What is the stream?" And he replies to the Buddha saying, "Venerable Sir, the stream is this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration." And then the Buddha goes on to ask Venerable Sariputta, "Sariputta, they speak of a stream enterer. What is a stream enterer?" And Venerable Sariputta replies, "Venerable Sir, one who possesses this Noble Eightfold Path is called a stream enterer, the venerable of such and such name and clan." So what we understand is it's very important to develop the Noble Eightfold Path. We know it is the way out of suffering, and it is also referred to as the stream. So when you look at what we develop when we develop the Noble Eightfold Path, it begins with right view. So if you begin with right view and you have that established, then you are developing the right path, the path that culminates in right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. If one doesn't establish the right view, then you begin with wrong view. And so the wrong path unfolds. Wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and the result is wrong concentration. So very, very important. When it comes to the disasters of having poor virtue and also having the wrong view, then you can see where the Noble Eightfold Path really needs to be activated, because the Noble Eightfold Path, the foundation when you establish the right view is your proper discipline. So right speech, right action, right livelihood. What is very important is to activate and develop the Noble Eightfold Path. When you enter the stream, you are establishing yourself on the Noble Eightfold Path, the right practice. And when that happens and you keep developing, then you develop further path and fruit of once returner, non-returner, and then the perfection of the Arahant. So the very key thing is to know the distinction between wrong view and right view. And we've spoken about this at different times in different talks, but we'll revisit it again because it's quite important. So if we go to the Micchāpaṇihitaṁ Sutta, this is Itivuttaka number 70, it said, this was said by the Lord, "Bhikkhus, I have seen beings who practice misconduct by body, speech, and mind, who vilify the noble ones, who hold wrong view and perform various deeds because of their wrong view. When the body perishes, those beings are reborn after death in a state of misery, a bad born, a state of ruin in hell. I say this, bhikkhus, without having learnt it from another recluse or Brahmin, it is because I myself have known it, seen it, and observed it, that I say, Bhikkhus, I have seen beings who practice misconduct by body, speech, and mind, and he repeats the same thing, reborn after death in a state of misery and ultimately in hell. And then the Buddha says, an individual here with a wrongly directed mind who utters wrong speech and performs wrong deeds, one of little learning who does demerit in this short life, upon perishing of the body, that foolish one is reborn in hell. So the Buddha here is clearly emphasizing the wrongly directed mind, which begins with the wrong view. So it's very important that we correct this, because if we don't, then we end up breaking our sila, having misconduct by body, speech, and mind. And therefore, what happens is, if one is of little learning, and this is something that we emphasize a lot, that the Buddha's learning system is a lifelong learning process. And when you have more learning, when you have bahusita, that you've heard much, you've practiced much, you've discussed the Dhamma correctly, you've contemplated in your mind and penetrated in your mind, then it helps towards activating the Noble Eightfold Path, ensuring that you're activating the correct path, and therefore not doing unmeritorious things and not ending up in lower realms. It's quite key that one strives towards entering the stream, which provides safety. In contrast to the Micchāpaṇihitaṁ Sutta, we have the Sammaditthika Sutta, which is the one directly after. So it's Itivuttaka number 71. And the Buddha says, Bhikkhus, I have seen beings who practice good conduct by body, speech, and mind, who do not vilify the noble ones, who hold right view, and perform various deeds because of their right view. When the body perishes, those beings are reborn after death in a good born, a heavenly world. I say this, Bhikkhus, without having learnt it from another recluse or Brahmin. It is just because I myself have known it, seen it, and observed it, that I say this. And then he goes on to say, an individual here with a rightly directed mind, who utters right speech and performs right deeds, one of much learning, who does much merit in this short life, upon perishing of the body, that wise one is reborn in heaven. So we can see how Nanda the herdsman died with a rightly directed mind. Over the 7 days that the Buddha was staying with him, he learned the teachings from the Buddha, and it culminated in him entering the stream. So there was safety that Nanda had realized at the end of his life. What's really important for us to know is that right view is so very important, because it means that we are activating the Noble Eightfold Path and practicing the right path. And when we do so, it enables us to be sustained by good conduct, by body, speech, and mind. When that happens, it's very conducive to entering the stream, very conducive to proper development. And the more we learn from the Buddha by hearing his words, by discussing them, memorizing them, by contemplating them in our mind, and then by penetrating them, realizing the truth, then what happens is we find safety. We find the same safety that Nanda has, Nanda the herdsman, and more than that if we develop further. So ultimately what's very important is to know not to meet the disaster or the misfortune that comes with the wrong view, not to meet the misfortune of then having a wrongly directed mind, and not have the loss of having poor virtue. So this is very important, and quite a succinct teaching from the Buddha when you look back on Nanda's story. So we can end this short session here. Let's share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem, wishing you well. Teruan Saranai.